It has to be the most entertained I've been all year. I mean, this show. Let's talk about it. What is up, Flick fans? Welcome back to my channel. So on this channel, we like to talk streaming shows and movies, whether it's Netflix, Amazon, Hulu. But today, we're going to talk about something that has been premiering in the United States on ESPN. We just got our last 2 episodes. It is on Netflix in other countries, so I guess that kind of counts. But this is The Last Dance, a.k.a. The ultimate peek into the life of Michael Jordan. If you guys are a sports fan, let me know who your favorite NBA team is. Who do you think the best player of all time is? I would love to see some of those thoughts in the comments down below, but let's get right into this review. So this documentary charts the rise of the 1990s Chicago Bulls, led by Michael Jordan, one of the most notable dynasties in sports history. We've been getting 2 episodes per week. We just got episodes 9 and 10. Just a bit of backstory on my love for basketball. Played in high school, have always been a huge college basketball fan. I'm more of a player-oriented NBA follower. I rooted for the Pistons growing up. I was a fan of LeBron when he came into the league, and I always root for UK players when they go to the NBA because, you know, living in Lexington, Kentucky, my wife's getting her master's at UK, but I have always had this love, admiration, respect for Michael Jordan, even though at the time I was growing up a bit too young to really pay attention to what we were getting and what was happening with this 90s Bulls team. But once I came of proper age, my dad filled me in on all the history because he was a massive Michael Jordan fan, as was my mom, so they grew up Bulls fans, and I am in the camp, and don't want to start a big-time debate on this subject because that's not the point of this documentary, but I truly believe Michael Jordan is the greatest player of all time. And what this documentary is for me is not only something that furthers my respect for him, but it's just another reason for me to feel that way. Don't get me wrong, I am a fan of LeBron. I had this competitive respect for Kobe Bryant growing up because he was always beating the teams that I was a fan of. But you look at this documentary especially and how Jordan played and the competitive nature and spirit that this guy had. Now, sometimes it would come off in the wrong light. But hey, when you're a champion on the level that Michael Jordan was, you have to have something that drives you. You have to have motivation behind why you are where you are. And the guy is not only a phenomenal basketball player, but he's a brilliant businessman. He's worth more off the court than he is on the court, and that is impressive. But this documentary was such an impressively put together, incredibly entertaining documentary, and like I said, the ultimate insight into why he is who he is. But it's not only about Michael Jordan. We get to look at Dennis Rodman, Scottie Pippen, Phil Jackson, everyone involved with this team. The main ones get their own somewhat individual episodes. In the first few episodes, we start out with Michael, we move to Scottie, Dennis Rodman, Phil Jackson. I didn't know half of the things that this documentary showed about Phil Jackson. Didn't know where he came from. I knew he had won NBA championships. I didn't know he was as impressive on the court. Maybe not as he is off the court. I think he's a better coach than he was player. But he was a part of some really impressive teams. And then the look into Rodman and his relationships with the Bulls, how he played against the Bulls, and then combining forces with Pippen and Jordan created a team that was even better than Jordan's early 90s team, which was already racking up championships. And it's just really incredible seeing what this man went through, how he treated some that, like I said, some saw as, well, this guy's just mean, right? If LeBron James did the things today that I believe Michael did back then, we would look at LeBron. I wouldn't. But some people would look at LeBron and say, that guy's a jerk. But Michael didn't do it because he wanted to be known as a jerk. He did it because he wanted to win. He had the winner's mentality. Sure, sometimes he would go overboard. But I look at what he did, and I respect what he did because the guy knew how to do it. He not only talked the talk, he walked the walk, maybe more impressively than any player from the 80s and 90s. And you're going up against some stiff competition. Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, everyone in the NBA at that time had their favorite superstar, and not everyone's favorite player was Michael Jordan. I think everyone was in agreement at one point in time that he was probably the best player on earth, but not everyone was a Michael Jordan fan. And not only because of how he would run over everyone else's teams, but there were a few things that this documentary sheds light on that made him look not so great in the public eye. I mean, it shed light on his gambling issues these are things I didn't know, right? I knew his success on the court, but at the time, I mean, I'm like 2, 3, 4, 5 years old. I don't know what's going on, right? I'm just a little wee lad. But certain members of the media were trying every way in the world to bring this guy down, because when you're at the level that he's at, I mean, he was the most successful basketball player, but he was the most famous guy in the world at a point in time. And this was a long point in time. Everywhere he went, people wanted to run across him. People wanted to have a conversation with him. Michael Jordan was the ultimate amalgamation of the concept of an athlete at that time. He was not only the MVP, he was the best player on their Olympics team, being teammates with the best players on planet Earth at that time. And a lot of those players are now players that we look back upon and say, yeah, they're some of the greatest to ever play the game. And there's a reason why a lot of the teams that he's on, oh, that's the best Olympics team. 72 wins, that's nothing. It's just the winner's mentality. And this documentary is not only a look into how good he was on the court, this and that. It does a very interesting thing to get into the actual filmmaking, one of the reasons why I do what I do. The documentary flashes back and forward through time. We start with Michael Jordan's final season as a Bull, and we look at this team, where they are at this moment, and how this year is going for them. And as we slowly approach the playoffs that year, we continue to flash back and get Michael in his early stages. Michael slowly going from MVP and I want the ball all of the time to more of a team player, and having the mentality of someone who, sure, I can be the scoring leader, sure, I can be the MVP, sure, I can make the all-star team, but I also want to win championships. And we slowly see that progression. And then once they start winning, they don't stop winning. Actually, they do stop winning because Michael takes a break from basketball. And that's something that I was really looking forward to, because while I knew that happened, I mean, obviously, we watched Space Jam, right? We knew he quit for baseball, but no, we knew he wanted to play baseball because that's what his dad always wanted for him. By the way, what happened to his dad I knew was tragic, but I didn't know how tragic it actually was. Not only did he have to deal with coming back playing without his father for the first time, he even took a different number, and I always wondered, okay, well, how did that number come about? Why did he do it? But then you see why he chose to no longer play as number 23 until he started getting superstitious, as most basketball players do. I mean, I was superstitious. I had to tie my shoes the same way, and I played high school basketball. Okay? This is the NBA. And you see the first time he comes back out on the court without having his dad there. I mean, his basketball shorts are on backwards. This is the guy that did the same thing prior to every game every single year of his life, but he always had his dad there with him. So I loved a look into that. I loved seeing the reasons why he wanted to go away from the game, why he wanted to come back to the game, and eventually he was even more focused. I don't want to say better. I do believe he was better, but it's hard to make those comparisons because of how good he was prior to that. He was even more focused than he was before that, and we see that, and we get that proven to us through 3 more championships, and the best team I believe he's ever been a part of. Not only do you have Pippen and Rodman, but you have a great supporting cast. You got to look into his relationship with Steve Kerr and some of these faces that we know now and that we're aware of, but maybe we didn't know the in-depth conversations that they had, the reason why Scottie Pippen sat out the end of that game, and how jealous certain people would get of others that were slowly starting to take their place. And we get a look at the outside of the Bulls and the teams they were going up against, whether it's the Pistons, whether it's the Jazz, whether it's the Cavaliers. And it was such an interesting insight into everything surrounding the greatest basketball player of all time. We learn about how he went about choosing which shoe company he was going to go with, who encouraged him to go in that specific direction. I want to be like Mike. Well, that was something that everybody said in the 90s, but why were they saying it? Just a fascinating exploration of his life. And episodes 7 and 8 had to be the most emotional episodes for me, where Michael goes to at the end of episode 7 when he starts to finally break down. I mean, we've talked about everything in his life, and all of a sudden he breaks down, he gets emotional because he's explaining why he was the way that he was towards his teammates. And you can tell there's that admiration, there's that respect for the people that he played with, but sometimes he had to be a little bit harsh. And we understand, or at least I understand, right? I see that emotion in Michael Jordan today, and I say, man, I mean, this guy, he cared. He was a bit overboard at times. But everyone gets that way in sports. I've heard stories of Peyton Manning. You hear stories of Tom Brady. You hear stories of baseball players that treat others in a way that may not seem great on the outside, but they're doing it because they have the motivation to win. And then episode 8, I talked about his father. That was extremely emotional. I had never seen before, crazy enough, the scene of him breaking down after his first championship without his father when he's just sobbing on the ground, hyperventilating almost, holding on to that basketball. No one can take that away from him. Dude, if that doesn't make you love and admire not only the sports they're playing, but the athletes involved and someone as competitive as Michael Jordan, I don't know what would, man. That was freaking awesome. And then episodes 9 and 10, we finally get into that final championship run. A great way to cap off what we've seen so far. And Michael Jordan finally saying his goodbyes to the game of basketball, or at least Michael Jordan of the Bulls. Obviously, he comes back for the Wizards. And just, again, some of the things that we learned in those final 2 episodes, whether it's the relationship with his security guard and the fact that we've been saying for how long it was the Michael Jordan flu game. It turned out it was the Michael Jordan pizza game. I truly could not believe when we got that revelation, and the fact that it all came at the hands of a couple of pizza guys. All of the memes on Twitter, fantastic.
Pizza time.
But overall, as a fan of the game of basketball, listen, if you're not a basketball fan, if you don't like sports, I don't know if you're going to love this as much as we are, those who are so motivated to watch something like this. There are obviously documentaries that are a bit more well-structured, documentaries that come together as more of a concrete thing. My only complaints and critiques of this is maybe in the midst of 6, 7, 8, there were times when they would flash back and forward too much, and, oh, we've already seen what Dennis Rodman went to, and now he's coming to the Bulls for the first time. Sure, it's a different perspective, but I like the concept of doing that, but maybe they went a bit overboard in doing that. 98, 94, 98, 95, 98, 96. I'm just like, okay, can we stay in one time period? That's really a minor complaint because everything else about this documentary, from the introductions, the way that they would fade into the intro, and the music behind everything made things so epic. The voiceovers, it's really good filmmaking on top of a captivating story, and that's what you want from a good documentary. You want it to be interesting, but you want the filmmaking to be great as well. And this had all of it, and plus, he's Michael Jordan. It's MJ, dude. Come on. So before I give you guys my score, thank you so much for watching this. If you'd like me to do more sports-centric documentaries, the 30 for 30s on ESPN, fantastic. I would love to review some of those. Let me know. I appreciate you guys for watching. And I'm going a 98% for The Last Dance. I'm telling you guys, captivating stuff. Love this documentary. Love, love, love. If it's not my favorite shows of the year by the end of the year, I will be baffled. It will be the greatest year in television history. The Last Dance was everything that I wanted it to be and more. Thank you to all of my patrons who support this channel, to everyone who comments your thoughts below. Who's the greatest NBA player of all time? Come on, I want the conversations. Be nice, kids. You guys the best. I'll see you soon.